Las Grutas de Tolantongo are a beautiful destination in Hidalgo, Mexico, worthy of any bucket list. They're one of my favorite places that we've been in Mexico, but they can be a little bit tricky to get to, and there's just so much information that you should know before going to enjoy your trip the most you can. So in this video, we'll share everything that you need to know about Las Grutas de Tolantongo, like when to visit, how to get there, what to bring, how much it costs, where to stay, and all of that kind of information. Like I mentioned, it can be a little tricky getting to Las Grutas. The closest airport that you're most likely to fly into is the Mexico City airport. It is about a 4 to 4.5 hour drive from the airport, so if you're in other parts of the city, it could definitely take longer. So it's not recommended to do as a day trip. We arrived too late in Mexico City to drive all in one day since it isn't recommended to arrive after dark. So we drove an hour and a half from Mexico City to Pachuca and stayed the night. To get to Pachuca, the tolls will be about $7, it's about 140 pesos. It can vary depending on what route you take, but just be prepared with cash since you'll likely need to pay some tolls. In the morning, we drove 2 to 2.5 hours from Pachuca to Las Grutas. There are no tolls, so you don't need to worry about that. And the last 20 minutes or so, you're driving down a pretty windy mountain road, and that's one of the reasons it's not recommended to arrive after dark, since it could be kind of dangerous to drive at night. It's a lot easier to drive in a car since you have a lot more control over when you arrive, and getting there early is really beneficial, especially if you're coming on the weekends. And it helps to be able to drive between the two sections of the park and not have to rely on the public transportation in the park. It is possible to get to Las Grutas on public transportation. It does take longer, and there are a few transfers. You would need to first get to the Central del Norte bus station in Mexico City and take a bus to Ixmiquilpan. And once you're in Ixmiquilpan, you need to take a combi or colectivo bus to the center of town near the market, and then you need to take another bus to Las Grutas. So it can take quite a bit longer. There's a couple transfers, but everyone in this area knows where Las Grutas are. So if you get lost, you can always ask for Las Grutas. The next challenge, especially for a planner like me, is figuring out where to stay. None of the properties, the hotels on site or anything, campsites, nothing accepts reservations. Everything is first come, first serve, which can be a little nerve-wracking if you are coming on a weekend because weekends can be super busy. The hotel that we stayed at and the hotel below both filled up on a Saturday night in February. So most weekends are going to be full. They said particularly from February until about September, weekends fill up and it is very busy. So keep that in mind. That's another reason we figured it wouldn't be a good idea to drive straight from Mexico City and arrive after dark, because it's very probable that on a Friday night there were going to be no hotel rooms left when we got there. So keep that in mind with your arrival time, especially if you're taking public transportation. And if you get there and they have no more spots, it can be a little bit of a tricky situation. So none of the hotels take reservations, but you do have plenty of options. Most people recommend that you stay at the Paraíso Escondido Hotel. It's right next to those beautiful Instagram famous pools on the side of the cliff. There is a brand new hotel called the Paraíso Hotel that's right above it, which can be a little confusing because they both have Paraíso in them. And the Paraíso Escondido Hotel rooms start at 1,050 pesos, but the Paraíso Hotel, they start at 1,600. We got mixed up and ended up paying more for a room than we needed to, which is a little bit of a bummer. So we'd recommend the Paraíso Escondido Hotel for the price. We didn't feel like the Paraíso Hotel was worth the 1,600 pesos. There was hot water, the Wi-Fi was terrible, and it was pretty echoey and loud inside, but most of the reviews for most of the properties on site talk about just how loud it is. There's just a lot of people around. There's people camping. The hotels are not really soundproof very well, so it will just be loud. So that's one thing to be aware of. The cheapest hotel is actually in the other section of the park called La Gruta, and that's over by the river, and rooms start at 900 pesos a night, almost half as much as a room at the Paraíso Hotel. but it's over by the river, and you can get balconies in any of the hotels for 50 to 100 pesos more. So if they have a room with a good view, I would definitely recommend a balcony because there's some really beautiful views in that, a fun addition to your trip. If you're going to stay at the Paraíso Escondido or Paraíso Hotel, because they are right next to each other, make sure when you get to the ticket booths that you go all the way to the right. Or even if you're just trying to get to the beautiful pools, if you go to the left 2 lanes, they're going to take you down to the river, and you will have to turn around and come back, which is a mistake that we made. So hopefully you can learn from that. If you want to go to the Paraíso Escondido, Paraíso Hotel, or the pools, then go to the right. If you're on a budget or you just really like camping, you can actually camp here for free. You can bring your own tent. The only thing you have to pay is your entrance fee, but there's no additional fees for a campsite. They rent tents if you don't have a tent, starting at 150 pesos, and they also rent other gear like blankets and chairs and grills, so you can bring your own food. People come and bring their carne asada and cook their food along the river and camp, and it looks like a really fun time. We're not campers. It's a little bit more of a party vibe and fun, but it is camping, so something that is less comfortable obviously than a hotel room. Definitely a good option though if you like camping or on a really tight budget. As I've mentioned, there are 2 main sections of the park, the pools, and then the other section with the river and the gruta and the tunnel. So with the pools, to get the best experience, we would recommend going first thing in the morning, which is one of the reasons it's really beneficial to stay at that Paraíso Escondido or Paraíso Hotel, because you can go as soon as it's light out. The sign above the pool says that they're only open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., but when we talked to the security guards, they said that pretty much as long as there is light, it's light out, they can let you in. So when we were there, they didn't close at 6, and they let me in at 7, and I was the first person in there. And so you definitely will get a better experience without a ton of people. You'll be able to pick your own pool, get some fun pictures and videos. The morning is the best time to go if you want to absolutely to yourself, empty pictures and videos, things like that. But you can also enjoy it in the evening, watching the sunset. There's still people around, but you can find an empty pool. You just, won't have your first choice, or it won't be completely empty. The other section of the park has the gruta, which is a cave where the hot springs water comes out of. There's also combines with a waterfall from above, which is a little bit colder water. So the cold and the hot water mix to form the river. A little bit more about the cave though. It's pretty small and dark. So if you bring like a headlight or a flashlight, you can explore more back into the cave, where it will be a lot less crowded. We didn't bring a light, so we can go very far back, and it was insanely crowded when we were there. It's really cool because there's a waterfall in the cave, so you're in a cave, in a hot spring, and a waterfall is falling into it, which is really cool, but 1 million people. Probably better on a weekday, but it is just a small area, so even on a weekday, it may not be that empty. So something to keep in mind. Another good morning activity if you have, multiple mornings, if you get there early enough. There's also a tunnel above that you can walk as far back as you can go, and it's very warm. It's full of just steam from the hot springs. Also super crowded on the weekends. It was really cool to see, especially the waterfall falling from above, and just you're in like kind of in the desert, but it feels like you're in the jungle in that section because there's just so much water and it's very green. So it's definitely a cool place. Again, very crowded. This then runs down into the river. A lot of people camp along the river, so there's a lot of tents and a lot of people there as well. We enjoyed another section called La Gloria, which is actually a separate park than La Gruta de Tolantongo Park. It's La Gloria de Tolantongo. And you do have to pay an extra fee. It's 100 pesos, but especially on the weekend, we thought it was worth it. It was a lot less crowded. You can also camp over here, which is super fun because they let you camp next to these like natural pools and these man-made pools that are just waterfalls falling into them. Super cool. You can also explore what the park is named for, which is La Gloria. It is where some water comes from a canyon, and you're just climbing up this canyon into these different levels of the pools. And there's more waterfalls, and the whole park is just this adventure to exploring different areas of it. They do have pools like La Gruta, but they're not as picture, perfect, Instagram-y. They're still fun and pretty, a little bit dirtier. They weren't cleaned as much. But for La Gloria, I'd recommend the river. It was a lot less crowded than the river in La Gruta. And for just La Gloria itself was practically empty when we were there on a weekend. If you're not going to go to La Gloria, the river section is very long. You can, if it's crowded, I'd keep walking, see if you can find a less crowded spot because it is a big area and it is a river, so there is lots of space. There's some important things that you should bring to have the best experience. One of those is water shoes. And they don't necessarily have to be like the water shoes that they sell specifically called water shoes. We actually use kind of waterproof sandals. I used some Tevas that I loved. They were perfect. Just some shoes that will stay on, that are not like flip-flops and will get pulled off in like the current of the river or anything like that. Just helps to keep your feet safe and comfortable when you're exploring all of the pools and the canyon and everything. So definitely recommend those. You will see them for sale if you're driving all along the highway. You will also see them selling little like plastic cases for your phone. So you want to take pictures and videos probably because it's a cool experience. So either bring like a waterproof camera, like a GoPro, or a case for your phone because there is so much water everywhere that it's really it's hard to avoid. So you'll definitely want to bring that. Also would recommend bringing your own food and drinks. All of the food there is pretty expensive and not good. There's just not a lot of options. There are a lot of locations, but they all pretty much serve the same thing. We did have an elote for 25 pesos that was good, but all the other food we ate was overpriced and not good. We wouldn't recommend it. So bring your own food and drinks, even if you just bring like some snacks and drinks and maybe only have to eat one meal there, that, would be better than having to eat multiple meals. Obviously, you'll want to bring, bathing suits, bags, towels, all of that kind of gear to get wet as well. But I think that's pretty obvious that you want to bring that. Do be sure to bring like eco-friendly sunscreen or bug spray if you're going to use that, just so that you're not disrupting the ecosystems there. When should you visit for the best experience? Definitely on a weekday. Weekends get very crowded. It's a popular place for locals to visit, for locals to camp. It gets super crowded. So if you can, visit on a weekday. Obviously not always possible. We ended up going on a weekend, and when we were able to combine it with La Gloria Park, that helped a bunch since it wasn't as crowded. We also went in February. They did say, we were asking about when is it most crowded, when is the best time to visit, and they said, February starts to pick up all the way to September, especially on weekends. They will sell out the hotels every night, and avoid any days that families would have off. So like Semana Santa, which is like spring break near Easter, they said just don't come. It's insane. In the summer, it's also pretty busy, but it's also rainy season. And so that can make the water not look as blue and beautiful as it's kind of mixing with the rainwater and mud and things. So rainy season in the summer is not the best time to go. They did say after September, it starts to slow down. So October, November would be a good time, especially because it's right after rainy season. So everything should be really green and pretty because it's kind of deserty. There's cactus everywhere. So it's kind of interesting to see this beautiful oasis in this kind of deserty, dry shrubland. So it'd be cool to see it after the rainy season though, when it's much greener. The only downside with visiting during the week there are a couple days when they're cleaning the pools. They are very clean, but that means that they're going to be closed for part of the day. They don't close them in the entire day. So just something to be aware of, and maybe ask when you get there if they are going to be cleaning the pools any of the days you're going to be there. We tried to ask them for like what specific day of the week they clean them. I don't know if the person we asked didn't know or if it just varies from week to week, but something to be aware of. They can be closed for cleaning sometimes. Okay, and finally, what everyone wants to know, of course, is how much does it cost? So it's Everyone has different, expectations of what's expensive and what's not, and you can do this very cheap by, camping and avoiding that, hotel costs. We've talked a little bit about how much the hotels cost already, pretty much from $900 for the cheapest to $1,600 for a room in the most expensive hotel, but they do get more expensive than that. That's just for like a single bed. So if you are more than 2 people, if you're a family or a group and looking to share, the prices do go up. I will be sure to link to the official site that does have all the prices. You can't make a reservation, but you can be prepared and know what price to expect before you go. Additionally, entrance to the park is 180 pesos per person, but it isn't just an entrance fee, it is a daily fee per person. So if you're coming, for example, like us, we came on a Saturday, stayed the night and left on a Sunday, even if you weren't gonna go, you tell them, I'm not gonna go to the park at all, I'm not gonna get in the river on the next day, or we're gonna leave early in the morning, you still have to pay for both days. So they do get you with that, you think it's 180 pesos, but it's really more than that because you have to pay per person per day. So be sure to take advantage of that second day there since you're paying for it anyway. And it is also, it's a small fee, but it's still 30 pesos per day for parking for the car. Food is rather pricey compared to other places, in Mexico. Like we mentioned, it's not great. It's about 25 pesos for an elote. It was 90 pesos for a torta. It was 60 to 80 pesos for a plate of kind of like a small snack kind of food, like a tlacoyo. And then a full plate for like a meal was anywhere from 120, 130 pesos all the way up to 200 pesos, depending what you ordered. And soda was about 25 pesos. So just some ideas of what things cost with food wise. We'd recommend bringing most of your food just because the food wasn't very good. And another kind of hidden cost that we weren't expecting is a locker. They don't let you bring anything with you up to the gruta or the cave area. You can only bring pretty much a towel and a camera and then wear your bathing suit. So that's it. So if you have a bag with anything else, you do need to get a locker. And a locker is 100 pesos plus a 50 peso deposit that you get back once you return your key on time and everything. So that was just kind of like another $5 charge. It's not a huge charge, but just something that we weren't expecting. And if you want to go to the other park, La Gloria, that is also 100 pesos per person per day. If you're going to rent a car in Mexico, just a little tip about, car rental, they do require that you have third-party liability insurance. So you may see that the daily fee for a car is really cheap when you're renting. Make sure you check how much the total rental cost will be with that third-party liability insurance. There is no credit card coverage, nothing like that can cover it. You pretty much have to pay it. So just not necessarily specifically related with Las Grutas, but something to be aware of if you're renting a car to drive, to make sure that you're not surprised by any additional fees there. Like I said, Las Grutas are amazing. It's a beautiful park, a wonderful destination. I would highly recommend it to anyone in Mexico. Hope that this guide has helped you feel more prepared to adventure and experience it on your own. If you have any additional questions that we didn't cover, I think we covered everything, but if you can think of a question that I didn't answer, let me know and we're happy to share what we learned or even do a little bit of research if you need some help finding it. So we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.